Pokémon Day 2026 is going to be a big one. In fact, there's a good chance we're about to see the biggest Pokémon Day in Pokémon history. And in today's video, we're going to explore why that is likely to be the case. So let's go through all the reveals and announcements that we're likely to see when it comes to Pokémon games. Hit the subscribe button if you enjoy the video so you don't miss any in future, and here's your warning that this video will contain spoilers from the Terra leak and Legends EA. If you didn't already know, the Pokémon franchise is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. A 30th anniversary is a pretty big deal and marks a considerable milestone. The Pokémon Company is in a phase where they can be considered a mature worldwide major corporation that has stood the test of time when it comes to popularity and continued sales. Sure, they haven't been around quite as long as Marvel and Disney yet, but they're already in the same weight class. In fact, since the release of Pokémon Go 10 years ago, they've been the #1 grossing franchise in the entire world. And when you consider who the competition is, that is mightily impressive. To give you some benchmark, when The Phantom Menace released, Star Wars was only 22 years old, and even that felt very old to the people who were behaving like this at the midnight screening. Arguably even more scarily, when The Force Awakens released, Star Wars was 38 years old, only 8 years older than Pokémon is today. But Pokémon being 30 years old really does feel like a symbolic shift for the company psychologically. So compared to its 10th, 20th and 25th anniversaries, Pokémon should be upping the ante this time around. We already know that Pokémon Champions is coming this year, and thanks to the 2024 Terra leak, we also have a good understanding of their planned games through to 2030. And the first of those planned games is Generation 10, which is very likely to be revealed on Pokémon Day and released later this year too. That's all very exciting in itself, but I think there will be at least one surprise major announcement as well, and I'll tell you more about that shortly. But let's start with Generation 10. According to the Terra leak, this is going to be the first ever Pokémon generation that is exclusively developed for Switch 2 systems. Now is the time to be getting excited about it, because Pokémon generations have historically only ever been released 3 or 4 years apart. And with Scarlet and Violet being announced on Pokémon Day in 2022, that means that this February will mark the 4th year since the last main new gen was revealed. What's so exciting about the reveal of Generation 10 is that it seems it's going to significantly move the main series games along from a technical point of view, which is long overdue. Recent teasers in the leaker community suggest that Gen 10 will likely be the first generation with voice acting. I actually posted a whole video about this a few days ago, where in my comment section, a producer who claims to have contacts in the voice acting industry left a comment confirming that auditions have been happening through the same channel that Crunchyroll hires their English voice actors, as far back as 2023. If this is true, hopefully some big talents with fantastic range have been hired in, like Monica Rial and Alex Lay. But regardless of what specific talent might have been hired, and whether the talent is established or up and coming, I just hope that there is an emphasis on quality performances, so that our new Pokémon game can feel super cinematic and immersive. And voice acting, if it is true and is revealed on February 27th, is going to be a simple way to massively increase the weight of the storytelling in Pokémon games, meaning the impact of the narrative beats should be way more strong and memorable. In addition to voice acting, Gen 10 is also supposed to feature a new weather-related battle mechanic, a new diving mechanic where Luminion lights up the ocean for you, and a massive multi-island map that you can traverse using an adaptive Roto scooter. The scooter, according to our latest understanding, is attachable to ride Pokémon, enabling us to fly, swim and climb in what appears to be a similar system to Legends Arceus, but without being restricted to just 5 rideable Pokémon. Instead, it sounds like pretty much every Pokémon can be attached to the scooter using some sort of leash. Ride Pokémon were a huge miss from Legends EA, so I think that's definitely the right move from Game Freak. Gen 10 is also alleged to have some form of procedural generation, meaning that islands would generate on the player's map uniquely from game to game. And depending on the level of sophistication, this could be very cool too. When it comes to procedural generation, on the basic end of the spectrum, we have the mechanics like we've already seen in previous Pokemon games, like the Mirage spots that would spontaneously appear each day in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. These came in a total of 32 basic layouts, 8 caves, 8 forests, 8 mountains, and 8 islands. But the layouts themselves were predetermined. You would just get get a random one appear in your game each day via Street Pass, plus some special conditional ones for legendary Pokemon. And that was kind of similar to the different hyperspace zones you could get in Legend ZA's DLC, again each with a predetermined layout mimicking a different portion of Lumio City. However, I would hope that Gen 10 goes a bit more sophisticated than that, with more variation and true uniqueness to each island, taking after the concept of games like No Man's Sky and Minecraft. This would mean content is uniquely generated by a more complex algorithm rather than giving us a fixed amount of predetermined layouts. And considering Gen 10's entire theme is supposed to be infinity, sophisticated procedural generation with infinite possibilities would make sense. In recent days, the Brazilian leaker and journalist Necrolipe over at Universo Nintendo speculated on the starters and predicted a fire bat, a water monkey, and a grass kangaroo. Knowing Necrolipe, he's probably onto something here, and I for one quite like the sound of those starters. The idea of a kangaroo Pokemon does throw a slight spanner in the works with the supposed location of Generation 10, which, thanks to the leaks, seems to be based on parts of Southeast Asia, including Indonesia and Malaysia. But Australia was another widely rumoured location for Gen 10 before the Terra leak as well. And with Indonesia being geographically very close to Australia, it may indicate we'll be going to parts of Australia too, or at least seeing some sort of Australian influence in the region, especially considering the big emphasis on seafaring exploration that is supposed to be in Gen 10. Gen 10 is also going to have multiple quest lines, which seem to be completable in any order, a bit like Scarlet and Violet but with even more freedom. Those quest lines include a gym challenge, Pokemon rescue, jungle survival, and a weather move acquisition quest, plus some sort of raid battles with an MMO element and a ride license quest with a particular focus on diving. That sounds like a lot of content, and it really does feel like Pokemon is pulling out all the stops to get their Switch 2 generations of Pokemon off the mark with a bang. So with regards to Generation 10, those are some of the things we can hopefully expect to see revealed on Pokemon Day, and we'll hopefully be finding out a release date then too. Of course, then we can expect more trailers throughout the year of 2026 as we enter the Gen 10 hype season and count down to the release date. Beyond Generation 10, we also have Pokemon Champions coming out this year, which is going to see a major shift when it comes to the competitive battling scene. Pokemon have consciously split their main series games into two distinct sub-series in the last 5 years. Of course, they will always have their core main gen games with the strategic turn-based battling, but also we now have two games in their newer series, the Legends series. And over there, they have been really experimenting with live-action, true RPG systems for catching Pokemon, and most recently in ZA with a battle system that's totally live and reaction-based. Champions, though, it seems, is going to be the main hub of the traditional turn-based competitive Pokemon battling, but it will enable you to combine all of the battle gimmicks that have been released over the years using the new Omni Ring. That means you can Mega Evolve, Dynamax, Terrastallize, or use Z moves in the same battle for a kind of ultimate cross-generation turn-based experience. That probably means that any new battle mechanic, like the weather-based one we're supposed to be getting in Gen 10, will remain exclusive to the Gen 10 games for a while before it becomes available in Champions. That means that Gen 10 will still have a big battling scene of its own that is still turn-based like core Pokemon games, but largely focused on its own battle gimmick. It remains to be seen though if things like Mega Evolution and Terrastalizing will make their way into the competitive scene of Gen 10, but it would make sense if those were kept exclusive to Champions, enabling Gen 10 to feel fresh and unique for the duration of its life cycle. And outside of the competitive battling scene, it does seem that Gen 10 will feature seamless overworld battling as you traverse through the world, a bit like Scarlet and Violet's auto battles, but apparently even more smooth and seamless. Either way, Champions will be the central hub of battling that transcends Pokemon generations, and it will be an exciting drop in 2026, featuring at the World Championships in late August for the first time ever as well. I can't wait to see a new meta emerge, combining all the broken sets and tactics from Gens 1 to 9 in one place, with tremendous access as well, seeing as it's coming to both Switch systems and mobile. If Champions is received well, I think it's going to have a big future. So Pokemon already seem to have two major releases scheduled for 2026, with Champions confirmed and with Gen 10 very likely on the way towards the end of the year. But will anything else be announced on Pokemon Day this year? Well, I think we have one more huge possibility. The 20th anniversary saw the release of Pokémon Sun and Moon, Pokémon Go, and also Pokémon Red, Blue, and Yellow for 3DS Virtual Console. Now, putting the classic games on Switch in some form would be a massive moneymaker, a no-brainer for Pokémon. And when they did this for the 3DS, the Pokémon company themselves managed the release. That means that even though we didn't see any classic games being planned in the 2024 Terra Leak, because it only affected Game Freak, there is still a big chance we could get something. I've spoken about this in a few recent videos, and I think this could be anything from a straight port to the Switch Virtual Console apps for Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, or a bespoke re-release or remastered package as a brand new game, potentially with multiple games in each collection. The latter option would give them more freedom to firstly make more money, but also to add follow-up services and longevity through things like events and online modes, and also potentially add things like visual sliders and some sort of rule customization, possibly even randomizer features. This would also enable them to make the games compatible with Pokémon Home, something that the Switch Online apps likely wouldn't allow, much like how the 3DS Classic releases allowed you to transfer your Pokémon to Pokémon Bank with their hidden abilities. I personally think if a classic Pokémon title happens, we'll see something in between BDSP and something like Final Fantasy Tactics when it comes to execution. The next question would be exactly what games they go for. The 30th anniversary is obviously a big celebration for Pokémon, and retrospectively, the original Gen 1 games is an obvious nostalgic way to go. But also, now the franchise is older, there's even more reason to consider Gens 2, 3, and 4 as classic GOAT status now too. Not to mention the early remakes like Fire Red Leaf Green and Heart Gold Soul Silver that improved upon those original gens in many ways. And that means this time around, we could conceivably see more titles than what the 3DS offered, but that may happen over time rather than them all being released in 2026. But hopefully 2026 sets us on our way. And though it may sound hopeful, if we actually look at the facts and compare the 30th anniversary to the 20th and 25th, we can see a parallel. For main Pokemon entries, during the 20th anniversary we had Sun and Moon announced, and during the 25th we had Legends Arceus and BDSP announced, and now during the 30th that slot will be for Gen 10. For mobile entries, during the 20th we had Pokemon Go, during the 25th we had Pokemon Unite, and now during the 30th we have Pokemon Champions. But also when it comes to classics, during the 20th we had the 3DS version of Red, Blue and Yellow, during the 25th we had new Pokemon Snap developed by Bandai Namco, and hopefully during the 30th that means something is going to fill that nostalgic classic void too. We also can't forget about Pokopia, which is going to be Pokemon's first attempt at getting their foot in the life sim market, and despite the controversy of it being a game keycard exclusive, I think the game itself looks like a fun little slow-paced slice of life experience that could be similar in popularity to Animal Crossing. If another partner developer like Bandai Namco or ILCA is working on something classic, I'd personally love to see a new Pokemon Colosseum game, or a remaster of the original, though we are already getting both Colosseum and XD on the Virtual Console at some point. And even though I think it's unlikely at this stage, don't rule out the announcement of a Gen 5 remake from ILCA or another contracted developer as a remote possibility, as Gen 5 is sequentially the next main gen Pokemon generation that is due some legacy service. I really do think that one's been kicked down the touchline at this stage, but you never know. So Pokemon is now 30 years old, and what's certain is that there are going to be some big celebratory moves from the company, not only when it comes to games, but also TCG and merch, as well as collaborations like the one they just did with LEGO. I'm very excited to see what else they might have in store for us, but let me know down below what you think. Is there anything you'd like to see that I haven't mentioned? And what would your ideal situation be for the releases in Pokemon's major anniversary year? Are there any spin-offs that you'd love to see revamped, or any particular developer you'd like to see Pokemon work with? I'm looking forward to see what you all think, and a final thank you to the members for powering another video. If you want to support the channel production, lock in your member badges and emojis by clicking the join button. Until next time, love you gang.